and found himself wanting to let her down gently.
"You've an extensive list of hobbies. Reading, horse riding, ballet, theater. It goes on. The thing is, the only hobby my PA can reasonably expect to have is me."
"Felicity has already explained that to me," Naomi said. Her first interview with his current PA had been thorough enough to leave Naomi in no doubt that the role would be a demanding one. Sebastian Desjardins' skills in cybersecurity were globally in demand. Apart from an impossible workload, he was a rich playboy and had a little black book that was his PA's to juggle, along with his private jet and helicopter. Yes, she'd been told exactly what the role would entail. He was arrogant, emotionless, worked you to the bone, but he paid through the nose for attention to duty. Him. From the bitter twist to Felicity's voice, Naomi had soon guessed that there might be a more personal reason for the sudden vacancy.
"Even so,"
Sev went to drop her resume on his desk, and, Naomi was sure, terminate the interview and send her on her way. "Would it help if I told you that I'd lied on my resume?"
"Probably not."
Instead of standing, he leant back in his seat.
"Go on."
"Well, I do like the ballet and theatre, but it's stretching it to say that they are hobbies of mine, and I haven't been on a horse since I was 14.
"What about reading?"
"I'll read in bed." Sev opened his mouth to say something, and then, very sensibly, he closed it. God, he could so easily and so very inappropriately have responded to that. Clearly, Miss Awkward had recognized the opening she'd just given him, because just as those full cheeks had been starting to pale, they had once again flushed pink the second she'd said it.
"Well, I can't command your time in the bedroom," Sev said.
And he hesitated again because, actually, he wouldn't mind doing just that. He made a very abrupt verbal U-turn.
"I warn you, if I offered you the role, then most of your waking hours would be devoted to me. Your time would be spent on a laptop or the phone sorting out my life. You wouldn't even have time to read your horoscope. It'll be mine you turn to first."
"I don't believe in them."
"I bet you still read them, though."
"Is that relevant?" She was tougher than she had first looked. Sev gave her an intense stare, barely noticing her full lips and round cheeks as her deep brown eyes drew him in. And with that look, Naomi revisited her need for the role. 12 to 18-hour days didn't trouble her, rather it was the company she'd be required to keep that did.
"I see you're engaged." Sev glanced at the ring she wore before returning her solemn gaze.
"Again," Naomi asked, "is that relevant?"
"Actually, it is," Sev tartly responded. "Because you'd have to have the most understanding fiancé in the history of the world to put up with the demands that I would make on your time."
"Well, my fiancé isn't here in New York with me. However..." Naomi hesitated for a moment and then decided that, no, if by some miracle he did offer her the role, she wouldn't accept it anyway. 12 minutes ago, her world had been complicated, yet ordered. Well, not ordered as such, but 12 days ago she had arrived in New York. 12 minutes ago she had texted her father to suggest that they catch up for lunch after her interview. She had just put her phone back in her bag and gone to take a drink of water when Sebastian Desjardins had walked out of his office and called her name.
"Naomi."
He was beautiful. Just that. Dark-haired, pale-skinned, he had very long legs, and despite the immaculate suit, he looked as if he should be wandering out of a club or casino at 5 a.m. He was so rumpled and unshaven. His tie was loosened, his grey-black eyes were a touch heavy-lidded, and he gave her not a smile as such, just a nod in the direction of his office, and a vague, unrelated memory had popped into her head. She had remembered the time she'd gone to see her lovely, familiar female doctor for a pap, and a sexy-as-hell locum doctor had come out. Naomi had flunked it and had asked the sexy doctor for a flu injection instead. And she'd flunked it again as Sebastian had come out of his office and greeted her. As she'd stood, she'd got all flustered and knocked over her drink. When he'd inquired in a deep, Russian-accented voice about her day, she'd been so entranced that she hadn't really heard what he'd said, and he'd had to repeat himself twice. With every question, he'd grown sexier. With every vowel he uttered, she wondered if the chair she was sitting on might be